So as I was working in the shop the other day, it occurred to me as I was showing my youngest how to do things that at some point somebody had to show me how to do all this. And I love watching YouTube to learn that stuff, so I thought, why not create a 101 video? So we'll walk through how to turn this wood into the cutting board that we just saw. The first thing we did was cut one straight side on the table saw, and then we'll move over to the joiner. So the key to any project is having good materials to start with. The key here is having those materials be what they call four square, where essentially you've got a perfect rectangle with 90-degree corners and parallel sides. The table saw gives you one straight edge. The joiner will actually create that second edge at a 90 degree if you're pushing it against the fence. And we'll have a little graphic here pop up that shows how that starts to plane down that side. And you can see it's essentially removing wood until you end up with a 90-degree corner and a flat surface relative to that. So we'll quickly jump through the other joining operations here, and then we'll move over to the planer. So now that we have one flat side, what the planer does is essentially remove material from the other side until it ends up parallel to the reference surface. Showing it in the graphic here, you can see again it's removing material. So between these two operations you end up with a much narrower board potentially, but it ends up now having at least one 90-degree side to two parallel sides. So we'll move back over to the table saw, and by using the original edge, we can now cut it into strips, which will be essentially four square. So all 90-degree angles, all parallel sides. And then as you can see here, now we have the raw material to start our board. Moving over to the glue up, and this is where maybe some art choices or style come into play, starting to look at how the wood looks together, picking grains, and laying it all out. Once I have the pattern laid out, I measure it just to make sure it'll still fit through my planer, which I'll use to condition the board. And then I always do a dry fit up. And part of the reason I do that is you'll learn some things about the wood, see if there's any defects or places where things are misaligned. And as it turned out on this board, there's at least a couple spots where the table saw or something else took a little nibble out of it. And you can see here little gaps in the wood that you could fill with glue, but I'd rather pick a different piece of wood, lay it back out, and have a better, tighter fit. Now that the dry fit looks good, it's time to glue it up. So I'll space everything out a little bit, turn some boards on their edges, and I'll actually grab just regular Elmer's wood glue and use just my finger to spread it. Some people use brushes and other implements. I just spread it around with my finger and make sure that I cover the surface. Now I tend to do a fair amount of glue because I want this to be a nice solid group, and it's always easy to clean glue off the surface. It is a little extra work, but you can always make sure that you have a good attachment. Really wish I had a 20 times speed in real life. Once the glue's on, again, just gluing it and aligning it and tapping things here to make sure everything's flat. And then we'll continue to tighten up the clamps, put a couple of extra clamps on it from the other side here. The narrower the boards, I think the more clamps you need to make sure you've got even force throughout and that everything is under pressure while it dries. I've added a couple of weights to the top again just to kind of keep everything flat, and then we just let the glue dry. So we've taken it out of the clamps. You can see the side that was previously up where I wiped all the glue off doesn't look too bad. But the other side has a lot of overglue. This is actually worse than usual for me, but I do believe that it's better to have a solid coverage between every piece and no gaps. So I'll show you real quick how to take this off, and we'll move on from there. Simple putty knife. And there you go. We'll actually be planing this because it's not perfectly flat. Things got a little misaligned when we glue it up. We'll do that next, and we'll come back and show you what the final board looks like. All right, so we've dressed the ends, just squared them up, and then put a 45-degree cut down one edge of the board because my intention is to glue this back up as so. Again, just to give it a little bit more character. And then I also want to use a piece of this bloodwood, very beautiful, very dense wood. I'll have to plane that a bit, but my goal is to put a couple details into here with that, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we do it. So I decided to add just one round feature. So here I'm using a 2-inch Forstner bit to just drill a hole through the board itself, and then we'll work with the bloodwood to fit a matching plug. So I cut the rough shape out of the bloodwood using a bandsaw, and then took it to my grinder to essentially fine tune the edges. And what you're seeing here is that sanding and then checking against the original hole in the board. Again, the goal is to get as close to a perfect fit as possible. So now we're just going to glue the plug in place. Again, just using regular wood glue. What I will do is put a little bit of the sawdust from the grinding of the bloodwood into the glue just to fill the cracks and help hide any gaps that might be there. So you can see sanded to 200 grit. You can see the inlay now that it's all fitted up. I did fix a few little spots with some Starbond adhesive. It works pretty good at filling, little knot holes and things that you don't want to have in a cutting board where they could trap something. So now we're just going to finish it up with some 100% tung oil. Again, something I like to use because you could drink it if you wanted to. I don't think it would taste very good, but it is food safe. So that's what I use on all of my products. And you can see how the wood kind of soaks up the oil, and it really brings out the color and the contrast, which is one of the reasons I love to use something like bloodwood or a different wood than's in the rest of the cutting board to kind of just make that detail pop. And then we'll just let it sit and soak up some of that oil. Thanks for watching, and remember, live for today, but build for tomorrow.